So we're back for part 2 of the Glowing in Tech podcast.
And now Dr. Anne-Marie is going to tell us about her book in her tech topic in 10. Over to you.
I am. And I'm kind of sad because I was going to do AI in the future of work, but technically it's still in the book.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is She's in Control. It came out on the 8th of September and has been doing really well ever since. It's a practical guide for women to take back tech. Like, that's the subheading. That's it in a nutshell. Technology originally was seen as clerical. So in the same way you see kind of secretarial work, exactly like, when you see them in Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and they're there like doing the telephone exchange and plugging it all in, like that's tech, right? Or when you see it in Hidden Figures and they're there doing punch cards and all the rest of that kind of stuff, or doing the actual computing. Before we had computers, we had computers that were human beings. And it was seen as incredibly clerical. And it has changed and it has morphed over the decades. And so now it's not seen as something that women do. It's not part of our social norm. So this book is my rallying cry. This is my guide. This is my get started for any woman who is afraid of technology, who doesn't think it's for them, who thinks that they're an arts person, technology's got nothing to do with them, who is scared of always breaking the tech that they have around them in their life. Any woman who doesn't want to be at the mercy of technology that's not being built for them or by them. And any woman pretty much that's alive in the 21st century, or anyone that knows any of the women above.
I love that. So what was it that inspired the book? Like, at what point did you decide this needs to be what I do now?
There's a short answer and there's a long answer. I mean, the short answer is I run Stemettes and we stop at 25 and it's girls and it's non-binary young people. And everyone's always like, oh, I wish I could. And I wish I could. This is great if I was younger. Or have you ever thought of doing grandmas in? And I'm like, and so this is my answer. That's the short answer, is that this is my answer for anyone over 25, where I'm like, okay, there's only 24 hours in the day, 7 days in a week. And the kids are great. So read a book. Yeah, read the book. This is me in a book form. I think the longer answer is that, you folks are working in technology, right? Like, there's so much that's going on that as a technologist, you can't be proud of our legacy and what's going on at the moment. We can't be proud of the fact that if a lot of the things that we see in the industry now go unchecked, we're going to end up in a Black Mirror, Terminator 2 type scenario, right? And so I think for me, as much as I'm working with the next generation and doing all I can to ensure that they've got a really positive, formative experience like I did, to ensure that they can thrive when they come into the industry, there is also something about, like, there's lots that can be done. It's not too late for us to change the fortunes of technology and the technology industry, but also of the world, by having different types of people engaging with tech. So, I'd love to see it that, not everyone's an immigration lawyer, but a lot of people have an opinion on immigration. How great would it be if we get to that point in technology where you don't have to have done the computer science, you don't have to have been on the coding course, you don't have to, love databases to be able to say, an algorithm that decides grades for people based on the statistics of the people that sat in the seat the year before them. I don't need to know the algorithm to know that doesn't sound right. So that's what it's about. And it's now, the sooner the better that we have people just taking this seriously and not leaving it. It's too important to leave to the men, basically.
I love that.
What do you think about the future of work then?
Should we do that topic? Yeah. So chapter 13 is on the future of work. And I think for me, so I was classically trained, I like to say, in computer science. And for us, it was called intelligent systems, I think, when I was studying. And then now it's become AI, machine learning, all these other different newfangled things. It used to be called business intelligence, and that's now like big data. So they have all these things that go in cycles, and everyone rebrands and the rest of that. There was no Bitcoin or blockchain before, but anyway. So where I become obsessed with the future, because I get to work with 5-year-olds. So Stemettes is 5 up to 25. I get to meet a lot of cool kids, right? And it's really interesting because we're trying to get them to see technology as a viable option, trying to get them to understand STEM, science, technology, engineering, maths, but also STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and maths, and see that it's something that they can do, something that is within their realm, something that they can enjoy, something that they can get creative with, something that they can solve problems with. And it's a really interesting thing to kind of consider. Like, if you're sat with a 5-year-old today and you're trying to encourage them to join an industry, it's that by the time that they join, it'll be at minimum 13 years before they then get into it, right?
Yeah.
And we know technology moves so fast. So it's like, I'm not preparing them today for what's happening in 13 years? Or am I preparing them today for what's happening in 13 years?
Yeah.
So I've got to reflect and think a little bit about what's the future of work. So in 13 years' time, when they turn up for their first day of work, what will they be turning up for? Because when I started Stemettes 10 years ago, and Stemettes is 10 next year, 2023. But when I started 10 years ago, none of us knew there was going to be a pandemic or a lockdown or any of these things, right? None of us knew that billionaires were going to be really serious about this space race. None of us knew that, I mean, a couple of us knew that we wouldn't quite have driverless cars here yet. But, you know, like in 13 years' time, what are we preparing them for? And so it's something I've got involved with via the Institute for the Future of Work. But I've got to consider this whole concept of what we're calling the fourth industrial revolution, which means that, you know, where it was steam before or the printing press or whatever, like now we've got another shift. We've got another change that's coming as a result of technology being used. Like, what does that mean in the workplace? So to give you an example from kind of previous industrial revolutions and like the changes that we've seen, I don't know if you knew, but there used to be people that worked in bowling alleys that put the pins back up when you struck the pins down.
Yeah. No, I didn't know that.
You didn't know that. And it's such a funny thing to consider, right?
Yeah.
That there was a human being that would leave their house and they'd sit there while you were bowling and then they'd try and quickly put things up. And for us, it's bizarre because we've only ever seen a machine. I don't know if you've ever been to a bowling alley.
No.
Other than if you do it at home in the garden, of course, unless, you know, you're living that way and you've got a bowling alley in your garden. But it's so, how interesting that person and the people that were born that did that as their job, if they were born now, that wouldn't even be an option. What are they doing now instead?
Yeah.
So it's something for us to kind of consider and think about. But also, that was someone's dream to make bowling alleys automatic, right? That was someone somewhere made that decision. And that's now a reality to the point that it's a funny concept to think that someone could do that. And so as technologists, again, it's on us now that there are decisions that we're making that are then changing what happens next and changing the future. So if you want to be able to talk to inanimate objects, someone wanted that to be a thing. And now we are able to talk to Alexa, talk to Cortana. You know, there are other voice assistants available in the market. You're able to talk to these things. And so when we think about future of work, there's all these changes. Like, what do people want in the workplace and what technology are they building? Who are those people that are making those decisions? And who are they building the technology for? So this is something that we look at a lot at the Institute for Future of Work. And there's like signs that you can see. So we don't know necessarily what's happened in 13 years, but there's certain algorithms you're seeing that are starting to creep in that people are using for recruiting purposes. To like get the word out about jobs, that they're using to make hiring decisions. That, you know, there's algorithms that are reading people's facial expressions to see whether they are trustworthy or whether they are honest. And you as the person that's hiring, you're not going and checking what the algorithm's doing. You're just being given this list of red, amber, and maybe green. And you're making those decisions where an algorithm has gone and said, trustworthy. And you have to ask yourself, how does the algorithm know what trustworthy is? You have to ask yourself, how does the algorithm know what trustworthy is, right? Because how do I know what trustworthy is? And that algorithm's doing it billions of times a second because that's what technology is about, right? So there's things like that. Or another example we had from our paper a couple of years ago was an algorithm that was being used in a retail setting to help decide shifts, pay, and promotion of people in this retail setting. And the algorithm was taking in workplace chat. It was using facial recognition to know where people were on the shop floor and who they were talking to, how much time they were spending doing particular things, a little bit of sentiment analysis as well to know how they were feeling while they're in those places. And so they brought in this algorithm, and initially the managers were like, great, I don't need to make these decisions. The computer says no, or computer says yes, and I'm going to carry on with it. And then after a while, they got to see that actually, you know, facial recognition, we've been here before. I'm sure you've had it mentioned on the podcast. It couldn't tell us apart. It couldn't tell me and you apart.
I
mean,
can't really
struggles.
be so surprised.
You can't be surprised. You shouldn't be surprised. Come on, we're just going into
I'm disappointed.
We're disappointed, but not surprised. And it's an interesting. So if it can't tell us apart, how is it going to really allocate shifts in a way that makes sense? That doesn't mean that we're here, there, and everywhere because it thinks we're the same person that has the time to be, you know? Or if it's an algorithm that's been built to optimize to paying people the least possible in order to keep them in that position. When we already have a gender pay gap, when we already have an ethnicity pay gap, what do we think the algorithm is going to do for the pay of those people? Who do we think is going to lose out? Who do we think is not going to get the promotions that they need? And who is historically going to be in that situation where actually, the algorithm's right. This person's not going to fight for it because the job means so much more to them. and all the other people that they support. Whereas there are other people that it doesn't mean as much. And so they're willing to play the system, roll the dice. And so we're going to give them the promotions instead. You've not based it on output. You've not based it on fairness. And so there's all these things that we have to kind of consider and be really vigilant about, but be really aware of, that this isn't just about the technology. This isn't just about technology companies doing something. But if you're that retail company, who is doing the checks and balances? Who's doing the audits? Who's thinking about the impacts of bringing these algorithms? Who's thinking about, okay, when we go to version 2, what are the tweaks and what do we need to do as an organization to counterbalance some of the risks and some of the unfairness, some of the inequalities, some of the other knock-on effects that are then coming in as a result of this technology. So that's kind of where I end. That's almost where I end the book, not to give it away too much, but that's almost where I end the book, where, you know, if you're a lawyer, if you're working in retail, if you're a driver, if you're whatever you might be, this technology is not slowing down. It's not going anywhere. But what are the tech rooms that you can be in? And what's the agency that you have to say, I'm not a technology person, or I'm not technology, but I've got enough digital literacy to know that that's not right and that's not okay and that contravenes what we've already said on this. Or that actually, why don't we have this instead? Because I understand enough about the tech to say, here's a nice mitigation, or here's a nice way we can do it, to mean that me and my workers, me and my colleagues are not going to be screwed over by this overlord technology you're now bringing in, where you're like, oh, well, computer says I'm just going to pay you that. Computer says you're just going to have that shift. And it's like, no. So that's just a little bit of a kind of a taste of why this is really important for everyone to be in touch with, even if you're not in technology.
Yeah,
because there's nobody that is untouched by all of these changes.
Absolutely not. And we're all seeing these changes happen so quickly. I think what's disempowering is the rapid pace of change, and also it's not by accident that it's made to seem intimidating.
Yeah, exactly.
As women, as people of color, as so I think it's really important, like you said, to try and become aware.
To buy the book.
To
give it to your friends. Come on, let's get together. Let's fight. Let's fight it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have some sense of agency in these decisions that are being made.
And some sense of control.
Yes.
Oh, love that. There's so many like different areas to touch in terms of the future of work. Like one thing that really I was thinking about when I was reading Sapiens is just how fast paced we are at the moment. And I was thinking about, everyone blames like social media for us being like really anxious and depressed, but baby, look how fast we're moving at work. Like my mum did not have to be doing all this in her 20s, like moving at such a rapid pace. And it'll be just so interesting on just how much that will affect our mental health if we carry on in such a way. Like, don't want to use the word, but you know, people are talking about quiet quitting.
Gen Z.
I'm not involved. I'm not involved. But it's just like we're seeing a movement of like quiet quitting, where people are basically saying no to burnout, and the older generation just seem to be like obviously much more against it. But it's interesting the fact that we just have complete different experience of just how fast paced the workplace actually is. And it would be interesting to see whether we go more towards like a 4-day work week, because we're super productive people. Yeah. Oh, okay. Tell us the tea.
So Stemettes is part of. So it's a global pilot across lots of different countries. I think there's 65 or 70 odd companies in the UK that have been doing this since June 2022. And then the pilot's up in December 2022, and then we have to make the decision by January 2023 whether we'll move to it. And we might do. We probably will. But yeah, like for us, it's been really interesting. This is what I was talking about, the automation, where I mean, there's a lot that can be done, a lot that can be automated, right? And I think for me in my career, it's definitely been, and I hear stories of this all the time actually, like knowing the technology and being digitally literate means that there are things that you can set up where it gets done without you being a part of it, and you can either gain the time back in the Fridays off, or get ahead because you've been able to almost seemingly kind of flex time, create time, make up time on what you've been doing. So I think for us, Stemettes is on a kind of role model employer journey at the moment. So we've got menopause and menstrual leave policy. We've got wellness action plans. We've got 4-day work week. We've got, flexi working. We're completely hybrid. So we only need to be in twice a quarter rather than people having to be in however many days a week. And so for us, it's been a nice experiment to be able to do, because it's nice to have Fridays off, but also to be like, okay, cool. Like there's a lot that needs to be done, but how else can it be done? Like, do you have to do that thing manually? Can you do 80% of that and still get the same results? Can we do, can you do it in 80% of the time and still get the same results? Like, is there a faster way for you to do it? Is there things actually we need to just change the workflow completely to allow you to do that? Are there things that were actually was nice around the edges, but actually there wasn't enough of a gain for the experience for our young people or experience for our partners? And so let's just edit that out and we just don't do that anymore. Or do we have admins that we support and we have more people that are part of, that get to share in the pie of, you know, Stemettes work? Can we pay young people to also, you know, work in and be a part of what we're doing? So for us, it's been a really interesting experience. And I think it's been fun to see actually who in the team has been able to like flip to using the tech more and who has had to rely on workflows and the way that we do things to improve. But it's definitely doable. I mean, you know, touch wood, we're halfway through now and we've not seen that big a dip. We've seen upticks in happiness. And we've actually seen people being able to say, yeah, actually, if I'm going to log on the Friday, I'm doing it for this just to get that done.
Yeah.
And then I have it off next week. And then, you know, you kind of, so we've seen a lot of that kind of, there's progress. And maybe that is the future, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. The future of work sounds bright. For
Here's
us.
hoping. Here's hoping.
I'm not
Stemettes,
not without trying. No, we have to be intentional about it being bright.
Absolutely.
And that is just Stemettes. Like, it's only 60 odd. Can you imagine if all the companies in the country is only 60 odd or 70 odd that signed up for it?
Yeah, that's pretty mad.
That's the tea.
So something that we've been doing at work lately is trialing out GitHub Co-Pilot and like being able to have kind of AI assisted writing code. And like at first that was a really intimidating thing. I don't know how you felt about it.
I literally downloaded it today. It's so funny that you mentioned it. I was just like, do you know what? Because I was just scared that I'd lose my ability to code if someone was just like basically like predicting what I was going to write anyway. But today I was doing tests and I was like, darling, I'm not doing this alone. So I was like, Co-Pilot, let's get you booted up because we're not doing this alone. Get involved.
That's it. It's like, it's the bits around, there's a fear about losing control when you automate too much.
Yeah.
But you can ultimately, like, now you've got more time to do the more interesting bits, the more fun bits, if you're able to use it to support you in writing tests.
And not all of it is automatable. I think that's the other thing, right? There'll be autocorrect. I mean, you have this on autocorrect all the time, right? Always writing duck, and that's not really what I'm trying to write. So I think it's something that, and there's a phenomena, I forget what it is, but I mentioned it in the book of like, even autopilot on planes, like there's still an element of things that you still need to understand. There's still principles you'll still need to have. And there are a couple of crashes that have happened in airplanes because the autopilot has assumed one particular thing and the pilot doesn't know from first principles and so hasn't been able to do it. So I think there's still room and there's still space. But like you said, it's like being freed up to do some of the higher level thinking and the editing and, you know, maybe feeding into the algorithm at the bottom and creating better autocorrect.
It is my favourite time of the episode. What's the tech tea? So, what is the tech tea?
I mean, there's a lot of tech tea. Today's tech tea is, I switch off a lot. I mean, some people call it digital detox. And I don't think I've done that since university, but I definitely have certain weekends, certain days where I'm like, I'm just not going to log in. I'm going to leave my phone somewhere in the house and not look at it. And I'm just going to live life as if mobile phones don't exist. I mean, the TV still, I guess, comes on. My gaming console sometimes comes out. But I do switch off. I am quite analog as well with my bullet journal. But like not every day plugged in and switched on. Sometimes just relax, you know?
Love that.
Black Girls Rest is something that we're very passionate about. Yeah, aren't we, Jessie?
We are. No, I genuinely think it's a really important thing because I think especially, and we spoke about this before, but just especially coming from someone who's achieved so much, who has such an incredible career, is involved in so many different projects, to hear that you have rest, that's like affirming for a lot of people, I think. So that's really cool. We've also spoken before about the kind of the grind mindset on social media, and you can't log on to tech Twitter on a weekend without seeing lots of people posting about their progress and how that can make you feel as an individual. I'm not doing enough. I haven't done enough. Yeah,
and having that guilt, you know, like not everyone, like I think that some people are perfectly comfortable doing their jobs and resting afterwards. It's just so funny that me and Jessie are talking about this because we are always doing stuff like outside of our roles, but it's just the reality is just because you see these things doesn't mean that we don't sleep. Like
that's the thing. Yeah, and I think it's tough because I can't share that I'm not and I'm like not online.
Yeah.
So that I get it, but I don't get it. So people always like, I'm going to log off for a week now because and I'm always like, no, don't do that. Just log off for the week and like go on with your life. Like we're fine. So I think that is something that folks need to remember, is that what you've got online or what you've popped on Twitter or popped on social media, like you've come on to do that and to post it. And there will be other times when you're logged off and you're doing other things that aren't posted.
Yeah.
And so you have to remember that you're only seeing the parts of people's lives that they're posting. And I mean, I have this debate, I have to remind friends of this every now and then, because there's certain people who seem to always be on Twitter and always be angry. And I'm like, that person comes to vent on Twitter. They're not actually an angry person. They just vent on Twitter. Like if you meet them, they're not angry and this is their outlet. So when you look at that, when you read that, understand that this is that person's outlet for their side projects. It doesn't mean that they're always doing side projects. It just means that when they are, this is where they come to post it. And I think there is something of like reclaiming what you put out. So again, in the book, I talk a little bit about working out loud and wanting to kind of be generous in your contributions that you make online. But I don't talk about, following on social media to like, I don't know, see the latest handbag or see someone's body, or like, I don't follow celebs on Instagram. I'm following to learn. Like I'm really intentional about what I'm following, what I'm consuming, when I'm consuming it. And I think for all of us, there's a little bit of reclaiming there of like, don't just follow everything for follow's sake. Like, what are you following it for? What are you posting for? What are you sharing for? When you log on, like, what is it that you're looking to do and contribute? And you being in control of your online time and you being in control of your digital time, which I think, again, the more digitally literate you get, the more you understand, they're only trying to get me to do this and, trying to get you to stay on. And you're like, okay, I know what you're trying to do, but it's a no.
Yeah. It's a no for me.
Yeah, I'm going to put it in a darkened place because I don't want you to listen to my conversations I'm having when I'm not on the Instagram, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to just live life and I'm going to, look out a window or eat some food or spend some time with friends or just sleep because, sleeping is also a really fun hobby.
No, exactly. I completely agree. And I feel like sometimes people sacrifice their sleep in order to be productive, but the whole point is of resting. It's just like you're a lot more productive when you do rest. And I think that sometimes it can be easy to miss that, especially if you're come from a desperate place. Like I remember I was desperate to get my first tech job and I would have sacrificed anything. Not that far. But like sometimes I felt like, I can't sleep or I can't go out or I can't do this until I reach this milestone and I get that goal.
As long as that comes in cycles again. So like I definitely had that for maybe the second and the third year of Stemettes. I was like, I'm not doing anything socially. I'm not going to anything. I'm just going to put my head down and do this. But I think I'm not doing that now. So I think it's also like there's seasons in life. There'll be some times when you do need to do that and maybe where rest is not necessarily always the top of still sleep, but you need to sleep at night. Like, that's important. But I think take it in cycles. Like sometimes, like when you need to get that first job, you want to give it everything you can. So you gave it everything that you can and you got the most, but you can't always constantly be, it has to ebb and flow.
Yeah.
There has to be a rhythm to it, right? So I think that's it. It's not just, sit down and expect everything to come to you because you're resting all the time in self-care. Like, no, there's it's in the change, right? That the productivity comes, not in the everything at high or everything at low. So balance, everything in moderation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Including moderation.
Yeah. Well, depends on what kind of moderation you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay, amazing.
That's a whole nother tech tea for another episode.
Well, thank you so much for being on this episode of the Glowing in Tech podcast. It's been amazing to have you.
Thanks for having me.
And how can we keep up with you? Where can we follow you?
So She's in Control. You can buy the book and that's got loads of details. But I'm also at Imafidon on Twitter and at Not Your Average AMI on Instagram.
Amazing.
And I'm playing with TikTok. I'm experimenting with TikTok on @Stemettes. But don't expect any blockbusters or anything.
You're just doing your own research.
I got work to do. Yeah, I got me on TikTok. I'm not really Gen Z, so I'm just just watching from the sidelines, like the auntie there in the corner, kind of clapping for everybody.
Love that.
Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of the Glowing in Tech podcast. We hope that you enjoyed it. So next week we have a special guest, and to find out who that is, follow us on socials at Glowing in Tech on Instagram, Twitter and TikTok. And also, if you're listening on YouTube, be sure to like, comment and subscribe. If you're on Spotify, click on the bell so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. We'd love to hear your feedback. And see you next week.